Happiness is elusive. Oftentimes, we may find that a certain thing or situation made us happy before, but we have now become acclimated to it. Today, I want to dive in and take a closer look at what happiness is and how to get more of this precious resource. However, happiness is also subjective. In light of this, I conducted an interview with my grandma to help give us a glimpse into two different perspectives on the nature of happiness. To generate qualitative data for this video, I conducted two interviews. As I mentioned, one was done with my grandma. However, I conducted an interview on myself first. Here are the questions I asked each participant. The first three questions are mirrors of each other: what happiness is to us, whether we are currently happy, and what we need in life to be happy. I threw in an additional question on the fly while interviewing my grandma because I felt as though there might be more that she was willing to share on that front specifically. Our next question is the same as well, which is who affects our happiness. Finally, I asked one or two questions about changing perspectives over time. I asked myself whether I expect to see my perspective change in the future, and I asked my grandma whether her perspective has evolved since she was my age, as well as what changes have taken place, if any. I feel that there are two distinct sources of happiness. One source of happiness is from within ourselves, and the other is from external events. Happiness from outside of ourselves, in my eyes, tends to stem from accomplishing goals. For example, if we want to earn a degree in physics and then we do so, we draw pleasure from doing so. Even if we feel happiness from receiving a gift, this may have to do with a goal to own the thing in question. We can even be made happy by receiving a gift if it is something we've never heard of. This may point to the fact that not all external happiness is caused by goal accomplishment, but it could also be that the item in question is helpful for achieving some other goal. Happiness from within seems to come mostly from being satisfied with ourselves. If we feel attractive, we feel happier. If we feel comfortable in our own skin, we feel happier. If we can maintain long-term relationships, we may feel happy from that as well. Hobbies also make us happy, and that may be correlated to a sense of skill or talent. What do you feel causes happiness?
For me, I feel that happiness is a state that potentially can almost always be there, particularly if we view happiness as something we generate from within. Sometimes when I was younger, I maybe would think that I'll be so happy if this specific thing happens. And now that I'm in my 70s, I don't always view it that way. For example, because I know that there are so many things I really can't exert power or control over. Right now, my dad, he just had his 95th birthday on 2 days ago, and he has a terminal illness. He also has Alzheimer's, but is doing amazingly well with that. Even though it's been a while since he was diagnosed, he does a lot of activities to keep his mind sharp, and it is really pretty sharp. But I can't allow myself to be in a state where I feel like I'll only be happy if my dad can recover, because that's probably not realistic. It's not going to happen. And so what I try and do with that, and I do love my dad so much. He's always been kind of the person who represented unconditional love to me. And so, I look at all the things that there are to be happy about. I get to talk to him on the phone. We get to laugh together. He still has his really incredible sense of humor. And so, and he's all the way down 800 miles away where they live. So I don't get to see him every day. But with that, with everything else, I'm always reaching for the good, looking at, what's positive. And if it's that I just talk to him and he laughs, maybe we share a joke, or as I'm going through my day, I just always reach for the good and what there is to be thankful for. And I just try to generate kind of my own happiness to help uplift the whole situation. I realize it's always my choice to look at the glass half empty or half full. So part of just reaching for the good or reaching for the light within, which I believe for me, that's my true state. So sometimes it's just about relaxing into happiness. It doesn't mean there aren't concerns. There's so many things in the world I'm very concerned about right now. I also know that I may have a limited effect on many of them. I could just let myself go down and go under with all of these concerns, but there's a part of me that feels like ethically that's not doing my best. I believe that our moods and behaviors do affect others. So, when I go out of the house, I look for the simple things like maybe sometimes a child will catch my eye or maybe smile or something, and I just love that. Oftentimes then I'll smile at the parent and the child or say hello. It's up to me to generate happiness and have it not be so contingent on what's going on around me. There's always something to be cognizant of and grateful for. And I just try to allow myself just to turn off my chatty brain and relax into that state.
Thank you. I do feel as though I'm currently happy. Recently, I purchased a new car. This has been a really interesting and monumental event for me because it was my first big purchase. It has caused me both happiness and unhappiness at once because I finally get to experience the wonderful feeling of owning something brand new and classy, but I'm also in a more financially stressful position than I've ever been. I also feel as though I'm currently moving towards greater happiness, as happiness in my eyes is more of a sliding scale than an on-off switch. In the near future, I'm going to be going back to school, which excites me greatly as someone that loves to learn. And I will have to cut back on work hours, which I suspect will leave me with more free time for hobbies that I love, especially creative hobbies such as music or video production. I will have to continue balancing my finances over this period, though, which may continue to be a stressor as I transition into a period of reduced income, especially because I'll still be juggling my car finance at the same time.
I think there's always like this little river of happiness in me. It never goes completely away. It's always there, and it's especially there when I really can immerse myself in it. To me, there's so much about happiness that has to do with being in a state of awe and wonder. You know, there is always something new, something beautiful, something surprising or delightful, no matter how small. And sometimes the smallest things are the most delightful. I do feel that this stage of my life is particularly challenging. I always derived and shared a great deal of happiness and joy with my family, my 3 children as they were growing up, my birth family, both my parents who are still alive, my sister and my brother, and my 2 grandchildren. In the past 10 years, most of them either already live or have moved out of state, and so I don't have that day-to-day contact with very many of them anymore. That always meant so much to me. When I was a little bit younger, I was able to travel back and forth and travel around and visit everyone pretty regularly, and I think sometimes it was like looking forward to the next beat on the string. I also had a really fulfilling career, and now I'm retired. So I'm sort of still in a state of transition as far as sharing happiness with others. You know, I have to find new ways to really do that. And sometimes, you know, that feels a little more challenging because I have to stretch myself a little bit more and be less self-conscious. And I don't know, it's just different. So yeah, I would say I'm currently happy. I'm really happy that I get to see my grandson all the time and have this real special time with him while he's here with me. That's just so wonderful. I'm just always looking for what there is to celebrate and just be thankful for in every moment, whether it's, you know, sometimes I look outside and, oh, there's a pair of trumpeter swans, or sometimes it might be the memory of a song, or something is just humorous to me and I just laugh. But I think being in a state of receptivity to that, where it's always kind of bubbling within us anyway, and then can just kind of spring up sometimes. I try and focus on that as my natural state instead of something elusive that I have to run after or that is very conditional. And so that is how my happiness looks and how I experience it today.
Life is ever changing, and our wants and needs are a part of life too. What I want, what I desire, and what interests me could also fluctuate greatly within a period of just a few months, as my circumstances change and new topics become more engaging to me. Furthermore, my goals might change too. Considering I pointed to goal accomplishment as a major source of happiness, this means that what I need to be happy will change as well. Right now I'm interested in learning more about the human body. I feel as though anatomy and physiology is a big topic for me at this time, and I'm really excited to get back into school with a focus on nursing so that I can really see the nitty-gritty clinical side of things that I didn't get deeply into during my public health education. I'm also finding things that used to interest me in the past, such as guitar and severe weather, suddenly much more engaging again. Recently, I also suddenly became more interested in cars for some reason. It could have to do with buying a new car, but I've actually enjoyed certain car-related topics for a long time, such as how the parts under the hood all work together. The thing is, though, all of these passions could suddenly fade in the face of some other interesting subject. What I need to be happy is ever-changing. However, there are some things that can really provide long-term sources of happiness. For example, long-term healthy relationships can improve our self-worth while also serving as a form of continuous goal accomplishment and could serve to form future goals that it can then help accomplish as well. What do you need to be happy?
I think what I need most in order to be happy is to show up in life in the present moment and be engaged and awake and aware. I'm not currently in a place in my life where I'm setting a lot of long-term goals. I think I'm real aware, unlike how I used to be, that I won't always be here on this planet. And so what I most need to do to be happy is just to be present and engaged right where I am. And as I grow older, I do end up spending more time alone than when I was working and raising a family and traveling and everything. So in a way, it's a bit more challenging, but it also challenges me to notice all the little things around me and in life, all those subtle nuances. It's not so much about bringing things to me, but it's more about learning how to be and how to be present and turn off the inner dialogue and the sound. Sometimes it's like trains running through my head, but to learn to slow down and practice turning off all that inner dialogue. Some of it's so made up. Sometimes I find myself thinking about what I would say to someone, but that's not what's happening in the here and now. That person is not even here right now, so what's the point of that? For me, it's more about learning to really be in the present moment. It sounds like a cliche, but I'm finding there's a lot of truth in that. What I most need in order to be happy is to show up.
I feel as though the answer to who affects my happiness is really found in the question, who affects me? I used a tiering system to show who affects my happiness the most, and it really boils down to who influences me and my life the most. I influence my own life the most of all, but right after that is my girlfriend, my best friend, and my grandma, who I even live with. After that, it's people that I regularly interact with, but that don't have as much sway on my future. This tier includes coworkers, immediate family, good friends, teachers, and so forth. We can carry on this pattern all the way to a natural conclusion, but it would be a bit tedious. Who affects your happiness?
Well, having been a daughter, a sister, a mother, a grandmother, and all the people that I fulfill those roles with are still alive and people I love deeply. How closely I can stay in touch with them, since most of them don't live close by at all, does affect my happiness. I know that I am ultimately responsible for my own happiness. It definitely, of course, affects my happiness if I get a phone call or get to spend time with anyone in my family or my close friends. My pet cockatoo is also in that circle. The state of the world also does affect my state, and staying in that river of happiness and just appreciation for the gift of life is challenging sometimes when every time I read or turn on the news, it seems like, I'm hearing about another mass shooting or horrible injustice, really, really terribly, terribly sad things all over the world. And I ask myself, what can I do? Some of these things are something that being here in my little house out in the country, I don't feel can have a real big, huge effect on it. But I think that one thing I can do is allow myself or discipline myself to stay positive, to look for the good in everyone around me, to keep aware that my feelings do affect those around me, and they in turn are affecting other people. Sometimes we don't even know our impact. I think most of us have had the experience of someone we haven't seen in a while coming up to us, and we haven't seen them in a long time, but the memory that comes to their mind that they want to share is maybe something that we said to them once that was maybe really helpful, and they were in a time of crisis and we might not have even known it. So we never know the impact that we can make just by showing up and being open and friendly and listening to people, noticing when people are left out and helping them to feel included, helping them to feel that connection. Even if we're just a stranger, it can really make a difference. I saw my dad do that growing up. He would always be the first one to notice in any place we went that somebody needed help, whether it was with a heavy box they were struggling with, or he just had an instinct, and he always found a way to connect with them and just somehow very softly brighten their day. I think that's real important. Definitely makes me happy when I can do that. Sometimes I forget and I'm sort of like sleepwalking through my life, but then I try and realize when I'm doing that and pop back up. I want to be kind of more a force of good than a dead weight that drags everything else down.
Thank you. As I've noted earlier in this video, goal accomplishment plays a large role in my perspective on happiness. Since goals change and new interests develop over time, I definitely expect my perspective on happiness to morph as I age. My values could change, and I might come to hold nature's beauty more highly than personal gratification, for example. Aging successfully may become more important to me as I get older. I may want to focus on my nutrition, sleep habits, and exercise more astutely than in the past. I do expect certain components of my perspectives on happiness to remain the same, such as the belief that goal accomplishment creates happiness, or the Aristotelian notion that happiness is the point of everything we do. What are your thoughts?
For me, my basic belief in what happiness is and what equilibrium is, happiness being kind of a state of awe and wonder, sort of the way maybe a young child, or even I see it in young animals like fawns, sort of beholding the world in wonder. That has not changed. I still find that a factor or factors in happiness. One thing that's changed over time is how much accomplishing goals are a part of what brings me contentment. I've raised all my children, my family is raised, and I'm so proud of them. They're really all doing so well, and they're making great contributions to the world. But I no longer have career goals for myself. I had a very wonderful career. So how my perspective has maybe changed is about embracing the small challenges of day-to-day life instead of trying to impact huge change like some of my professional years. I don't want to lose my natural buoyancy and ability to kind of surf the waves in life with the challenges and the sorrows that life inevitably brings to us. It is challenging as one grows older. One loses, people my age have been dying around me, people that I know that I'm close to, some relatives, even cousins my age, have already died. And I'm trying to embrace impermanence as also a part of life. And by impermanence, I think I mean not just the changing of the world around me, but the spiritual impermanence of everything. How everything really is always, always subtly changing, or maybe quite noticeably changing when it's big enough to get our attention, such as climate change, which we pretty much have ignored until recently. I do want to keep my natural buoyancy. I have to be artful and creative and even more positive to do that, I think, as I grow older and my body grows older.
So, Grandma, for this slide, I was wondering if you could tell me first what happiness meant to you when you were my age, and then I'll ask you about how that's different from what happiness means to you now once you're done.
I might have to backtrack just a little bit before my 20s to put it all in context. Mm-hmm. I was kind of a late bloomer, but I also was very young for my grade. I started school a year early, and was also young for the start of that school year anyway. I graduated when I was 16. I did not have a driver's license or any real skills yet. I had mostly worked in restaurants that I could walk to. And so I left home really without the skills to really be able to, I think I'll say, maybe take really good care of myself. And so when in the age of 16 and maybe in my very early 20s, I was kind of a flower child. I hitchhiked around. I've always loved animals and always, always, always have loved nature. So a lot of my travels were just about seeing the world. I hitchhiked down into Mexico and all over in this continent of North America, just
enjoying the beauty of people and of nature everywhere. How I have changed looking so many years later, including my early 20s. Looking back, I realized that I was not willing at that time to go ahead and accept the responsibility that it would be needed for me to gain some of the skills I needed. I could have lived with my parents long enough to at least get my driver's license, practical things like that. But instead, I traveled all around. I lived in communes. I learned a lot, and when I finally was ready to come back and figure out how to make live a more productive life for myself, I was a little bit older. And so I learned to embrace responsibilities and see all the goodness and the beauty of that too, of being connected with other people in a community, whether it's a community of learning. I did end up going to college. I did end up becoming a mother. I did end up with a career. All throughout all those years, learning to care for responsibilities, care for others, care about doing a good job and adding something to the world just increased in responsibility to me. Beauty became a little more involved with connection with the world and with humans, I think, than when I was in my late teens, after I left home in my very early 20s. And so now to me, in some ways I have less responsibility since I'm not working and my family is all grown and launched. I still find beauty in that, and I still want to do the very, very best I can.
So I think what we can see is that primarily, and this I think is the most glaring thing, is that happiness is different for every person. It's not just a difference in age, it's a difference in perspective. It's a difference in experiences. And secondarily, what makes us happy does change as we age. My grandma was able to compare what happiness is to her now compared to when she was my age. And I think one thing that we can see is that for people my age, goals are more important than they are as we age, or once we're reaching retirement age. We want to make a big impact, we want to be famous, we want to be rich, but connections become more important as we traverse through life. We start families, we decide on who our friends are going to be for life. So Grandma, as a closing thought, and it has nothing to do with what I was just saying, but I have a lot of friends and acquaintances that are big fans of yours. We've got Craig, there's Ellie, Ruth, all my friends of mine on various social media. What would you like to tell them?
Woo. Wow. Oh gosh, I guess what I want to say is life is beautiful. It's hard, but it is a gift. Savor every moment. Be all you can be in terms of showing up for yourself, for your loved ones, for your family, for your friends. They won't live forever, and you won't live forever. None of us do. But really, really appreciate. Allow yourself to relax into appreciation and even just gratitude and enjoyment of all these wonderful people in your lives. Just really enjoy, appreciate, and share.
Thank you. And what would you say to Yeti if he was going to watch this? And who is Yeti?
Oh, Yeti is my cockatoo, a Moluccan cockatoo. He's a parrot. He's kind of pinkish white with a giant fluorescent orange crest. And I have learned so much from Yeti. Yeti always seems to be expressing happiness. For some reason, he just loves me so much. I love him so much. In a way, he's my teacher. Yeti, I recently learned, has liver disease. If he were a human, he'd be on a list for a liver transplant. However, that's not possible with parrots. He means so much to me. He talks, he says such funny things. He really likes me to be where he is, and he just makes such an effort to even always be good. Parrots love to chew on everything, and when he's out running around, his instinct is to go chew on all the wood. My house is built of wood. My walls are all natural wood and everything, and of course he wants to eat it all up, but all I have to do is say, Yeti, or no Yeti, or come back, and, he stops. And he talks to me, he likes me to follow him around. He'll say things like, come here, and I'll look around to make sure I'm following him. Or when he's in his cage, if I go upstairs, he'll say, he'll say, come back here, come down here. If I go in my bedroom, it'll be, come back out here, come here. If he's sitting on a high perch, come up here. If he's on the floor, come down here. And what I love about Yeti and what I admire so much is he always makes an effort and he always just shows up. He could sit there and he could be depressed and he could be inactive, or he doesn't have a bed, but the equivalent of a human, just lying down on their bed and sighing and just feeling the weight of the world. And he doesn't do that. So he's a very great teacher to me. Oh, and I would just want to tell him, Yeti, I love you so much, and thank you for coming into my life and for loving me. I'm going to cry, but he really has shown me unconditional love, and I think that's a rare thing in life, He loves me no matter what. He just does, and that's such a gift. I think that's the greatest gift we can receive in life, and so, being able to give it, and that's kind of what I meant when I said just share and appreciate and love one another, because, wow, that's the gift of life.
Thank you for that. I think Yeti would be really happy to hear that. And I'm glad that viewers will get a little bit better of an idea of who he is.
Yeah, and I tell him I love him all the time, so he always says that to me too. He says, I love you.
Yes, he does. Okay, so my last question is, perhaps your biggest fan among my friend group is actually Craig's brother, Nate. Okay? And Nate, what he loves so much is when he and I will be playing a game together online and he hears you say something to me in the background. And the reason he loves that is because he says that not only our interactions, but your nature is very wholesome. So could you tell us something wholesome to close out the interview, especially something wholesome about your gardens?
Oh, wow. I have a lot of flowers. I even have some that originally were in my grandma's yard. We're talking about, 50, 60, 70 years ago. That some of these are really long-lived plants. But to me, wow, flowers are so beautiful, and probably most of us agree on how beautiful they are. But the kind I have are perennials, and they come back every year. And they're kind of a little bit a lesson about life, too. And I think about this as I grow older and sort of begin to approach the end of my life, how the seasons of our life, the spring, the summer, the fall, and the winter of our lives. And even though in the fall everything turns brown and dies down, in the winter we can't see anything. It looks like everything is dead. Well, it creates a mystery in life. The flowers are kind of allegorical. We have to wonder when things are no longer present to us. Like my dad, has leukemia and he's in his 90s. Both my parents are in their mid-90s. And Yeti, I know he has something that he's not going to be able to just live forever with me, maybe. About what is life. Is there anything in life that is permanent, And I think that one thing that is permanent is the love that we share with others and the joy that we give them. The joy that we bring, laughing together, all of that. I really do believe at this part of my life that releases an energy into the world that is always there and always swirling. When I was little, my dad used to talk to me a lot about, he was a physics teacher, so we'd be going on long drives and I'd be sitting in the back seat behind him and he'd talk about conservation of matter and energy. Because I would ask him sometimes, what happens when we die? And he would talk to me about how everything changes, everything in life changes state, and to learn to be comfortable with uncertainty. This is starting when I'm 4 years old and I'm still grasping to really understand that. But gosh, I don't know, I got off on a tangent. It was about flowers. But anyway, flowers to me are kind of a real example of that. It doesn't look the same. Everything in life, is always changing, really, and in a state of flux. And learning to embrace that is a real big thing.
Thank you. That was a good ending.